She looked me up and down, eyes narrowing with disdain, before scoffing. Someone like you doesn't belong in a seat like this. The city skyline was fading into the distance as Evelyn Monroe settled into her seat, exhaling a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It had been a long week at a high-stakes cybersecurity conference in Chicago. 5 grueling days of discussing advanced hacking techniques, phishing attacks, and the latest ransomware variant. Yeah, not exactly a beach vacation. She was mentally exhausted and more than ready to be back home in Seattle. As a federal investigator specializing in cybercrime, Evelyn was used to high-pressure environments. But after days of non-stop networking and technical panels, all she wanted was a quiet flight, a good book, and maybe a glass of wine to take the edge off. She had been strategic about this, booking a window seat in premium economy for the extra legroom, using her frequent flyer perks to pre-board, and settling in with noise-canceling headphones and a gripping thriller. She even managed to snag a surprisingly decent glass of Chardonnay before takeoff. Things were looking up, or so she thought. The plane slowly filled with the usual pre-flight chaos. Families struggling with restless kids, business travelers frantically typing away, and that one guy loudly finishing a call despite the flight attendant's warnings. Evelyn tuned it all out, engrossed in her book. Then she arrived. She could practically smell the entitlement. Designer sunglasses perched on her head, an expensive handbag slung over her shoulder, and perfectly coiffed blonde hair. But the real giveaway? That unmistakable, "I need to speak to your manager" expression. The woman stopped dead in the aisle, glaring at Evelyn. The Chardonnay suddenly tasted a little less enjoyable. "Excuse me," the woman said, her tone dripping with disdain, her voice loud enough to turn heads. Evelyn lowered her book, removed her headphones, and gave her best "don't push me" smile. "I think there's a mistake. I have seat 12A. She gestured to her boarding pass, neatly tucked into the seat pocket. The woman scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "No, I have seat 12A. You obviously stole it." Evelyn blinked. "Stole it? I was in the restroom, and you probably saw your chance to sneak in here." "The restroom?" Boarding had barely started 15 minutes ago. Evelyn took a slow breath. "Ma'am, I pre-boarded. I printed my boarding pass at home and haven't moved since I sat down. Maybe you're looking at the wrong row." She even offered to show her boarding pass, hoping to de-escalate the situation. But that's when the racism really started bubbling to the surface. The woman's eyes flicked over Evelyn's face, lingering on her deep brown skin. "Well, it's not surprising, is it? Someone like you probably wouldn't even know how to read a boarding pass properly." Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. She had dealt with microaggressions before. Being a black woman in a male-dominated field came with its fair share of nonsense. But this was blatant. This was aggressive, and this was public. Passengers around them were now watching, whispering. The tension in the air was thick, that Evelyn's face burned. But she wasn't about to let this woman humiliate her, and she sure as hell wasn't giving up her seat. "I refused to let this woman ruin my trip home." Clenching my jaw, I reminded myself to stay calm. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice measured, "I pre-boarded. My boarding pass clearly states 12A. If there's any confusion, we can ask a flight attendant to verify." I even reached for my boarding pass to show her. But she didn't care. She had already made up her mind. "You stole my seat," she hissed. "I stepped away, and you took advantage. I know what I paid for." The entitlement was dripping from her voice. She truly believed I, a black woman, couldn't possibly belong in premium economy, that I had to be lying. This wasn't about a seat. This was about something far worse. And I knew right then logic wasn't going to work on her. Before I could even attempt to de-escalate, she went nuclear. She started yelling, "Get her off this plane. She's a thief. She stole my seat. I paid good money for this, and I won't let her get away with it." Her voice was piercing, slicing through the murmurs of other passengers. Heads snapped toward us. Some people even pulled out their phones. My face burned, not from shame, but from anger that I am a federal agent, for crying out loud. Not some common criminal. From the corner of my eye, I saw the flight attendants, who had been cautiously watching from a distance, now rushing toward us. 2 of them, one older woman, one young man, arrived, their expressions strained with a mix of concern and exhaustion. "Ma'am," the young flight attendant said, "let's just check the manifest. We can verify your seat." But she cut him off. "I don't care about your manifest," she shrieked. "I know what seat I paid for. This woman is a liar and a thief. Throw her off the plane." And then she pointed at me. Not just a casual gesture, no, a sharp, stabbing motion. Her manicured finger inches for my face. I bet she doesn't even have a real ticket. The young flight attendant tried again, his voice calm. Ma'am, please, if we could just see your boarding pass. She wasn't listening. Instead, she shoved past him, stepping even closer to me. I want her arrested. She probably has a criminal record. Probably steals seats like this all the time. That was it. I had tried patience. I had tried reason. But she just kept pushing that I wasn't going to let her publicly humiliate me, throw out baseless accusations, and degrade me just because of her prejudices. This needed to stop. Now, the tension in the air was suffocating. The passengers around us were growing restless. The flight attendants were struggling to keep the situation under control if this escalated any further. We weren't taking off, that I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I was done worrying about causing a scene. I was done being polite. I was done being understanding. It was time for Karen to learn the consequences of her actions. Now here's where it gets fun. Slowly, calmly, I reached into my purse. With deliberate precision, I unzipped the inner compartment where I kept my credentials. And then, with an unmistakable air of authority, I pulled out my FBI badge and ID card and I held them up, clear as day, for everyone to see, especially her. Ma'am, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. I am Special Agent Evelyn Monroe with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I strongly suggest you lower your voice and cease making these false accusations immediately. The effect was instantaneous. Her face, which had been an angry shade of red just seconds ago, drained of all color. Her jaw dropped. Her eyes widened in pure, unfiltered disbelief. She froze, mid-rant, like someone had hit the pause button on her. The previously noisy cabin fell into absolute silence. You could hear a pin drop. Every single passenger was now watching, some with mouths slightly open, others barely suppressing smirks. The flight attendants looked stunned. And the young man, the one who had been trying to intervene, actually mouthed the words "thank you" to me. Karen, meanwhile, looked like she had seen a ghost. Her lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. She blinked, swallowed, blinked again. It was as if her brain was struggling to process reality that I took one step closer, not breaking eye contact. Now, I continued, I suggest you find your actual seat and refrain from further harassment. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to contact the authorities upon arrival in Los Angeles. The flight attendants, now firmly back in control, stepped in. Ma'am, the older attendant said, her voice much less patient than before, let's go. Now, Karen didn't argue. For the first time since this entire fiasco began, she complied. The young flight attendant gently guided her away as she stumbled, head down, completely humiliated. The tension in the cabin finally started to dissipate. People turned back to their books, their movies, their conversations. Crisis averted. But oh, the story doesn't end here. After Karen was seated, several rows behind me and Coach, the young flight attendant returned and he leaned in slightly and with a small grin said, I just want to personally apologize for that mess. And also, your next drink is on us. I smiled. I'll take a double Chardonnay then. And let me tell you, I savored every sip. Karen, she sat in silence for the rest of the flight, never once looking my way. Checkmate. The flight attendant mouthed the words, thank you to me. I continued, my voice firm but controlled. I have already presented my valid boarding pass for seat 12A to the gate agent and the flight crew. Your unfounded accusations are not only disruptive to this flight, but also potentially actionable. Impersonating a federal agent, making false accusations, and disrupting air travel are all serious offenses. I could see the wheels turning in Karen's head. The entitled confidence she had exuded moments ago evaporated, replaced by sheer panic. She stammered, struggling to form words. I, she sputtered, barely above a whisper. I didn't give her a chance to recover. Now, I suggest you find your correct seat and refrain from further harassment. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to contact the authorities upon arrival in Seattle. The flight attendants, sensing the shift in power, quickly stepped in. One of them gently guided Karen away, promising to help her locate her seat. Karen, now meek and subdued, followed without protest, her head bowed in shame. The tension in the cabin slowly dissipated as people returned to their books, movies, and conversations. The crisis, it seemed, had been averted. A small victory. But the story doesn't end there. After Karen was led away, the young flight attendant who had thanked me earlier returned. He profusely apologized for the inconvenience and thanked me again for handling the situation so effectively. Then he smiled. "Would you like a drink on the house, ma'am?" I grinned. "A double Chardonnay, please." I deserved it. The rest of the flight was blissfully uneventful. I finished my cheesy thriller, enjoyed the surprisingly decent in-flight entertainment, and even caught a few hours of sleep. Karen, on the other hand, was now seated several rows behind me in coach, looking thoroughly miserable. She didn't make eye contact with me for the rest of the flight. Karma strikes back. As we deplaned in Seattle, I witnessed something truly satisfying. Karen, in her haste, tripped. Her expensive handbag went flying. Its contents scattered all over the aisle. Designer sunglasses, a shattered makeup compact, and her passport skidding several feet away. I smiled at a small thing, but a perfect dose of karma. The universe had spoken that I walked past her without making eye contact. Behind me, I heard her muttering under her breath, scrambling to collect her things. For a brief second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered her racist accusations and entitled behavior, and the sympathy vanished. I grabbed my carry-on from the overhead compartment and walked off the plane, a sense of vindication washing over me that I had stood my ground. I had defended myself. And I had won that a few days later. I received an email from the airline. They had investigated the incident. Turns out, Karen had booked the wrong seat. She had mistakenly reserved 12B, not 12A. They apologized for the inconvenience and even offered me a voucher for a future flight. But here's the best part. Apparently, after being escorted to her seat, Karen had boasted about trying to get me kicked off the plane. The flight attendant overheard that he reported her. The airline took it seriously, and they held her accountable. I felt completely vindicated that IT was the perfect ending to a truly absurd, infuriating experience. The takeaways, so, what's the lesson here? Don't be a Karen. Entitlement and prejudice are never a good look, and they have serious consequences. Don't judge a book by its cover. I may be a black woman, but I'm also a special agent with the FBI. And I'm not afraid to use my badge when necessary. Always double-check your seat assignment. It could save you a lot of embarrassment and potential legal trouble. Karma is real. Sometimes it comes in the form of a spilled handbag and shattered sunglasses. This experience reminded me of the importance of representation. As a black woman in law enforcement, I know I'm breaking stereotypes every day. People need to see that we are capable, intelligent, and deserving of respect. And we need to stand up for ourselves. Whenever we encounter prejudice, I hope you enjoyed my story. Read it that it's definitely one for the books. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay respectful, and always double-check your boarding pass.